Welcome, everyone. Today, we are talking about succeeding in an era of data differentiation. I have with me Justin Heller, the SVP and Chief Data Officer at Synchrony, and Ram Kumar, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Cigna Healthcare. Gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good morning.
Good morning, actually. Yeah.
We're in interesting times right now. We've been in this era of digital transformation for a number of years. I'm sure you guys have a pretty clear picture of what that means, but it's still probably pretty vague to a lot of people out there. Data has become the lifeblood of businesses. Experiences matter. At least in my world, they matter. I think we have a lot of choices available to us. We can fly a lot of different airlines. We can stay in different hotels. We can take Uber or Lyft. And so I really feel we're in this era where experiences matter. I think companies like Amazon are showing that putting the customer first is been quite a good move for them. And so we are all tasked with the challenge of making sense of all this data. We've been spending the last 20 years saying we need more data, we need more data, we need more data. We've gotten our wish, and now we have executives like ourselves whose job is to really make sense of all the data that we have out there. And we're not talking about small amounts of data. We're talking about petabytes. We're talking about thousands and 10,000s and hundreds of thousands of requests per second that we're bringing in, and all of the environmental pressures that are out there around consent and privacy and all the things that we need. So I'm excited about this discussion that we're going to have. I'd like you guys to just introduce yourself really quick. Justin, why don't you go first and talk about what it is that you do and what it is that makes you tick?
Sure. So my name's Justin Heller. As was said in the introduction, I'm the Chief Data Officer at Synchrony. I've been Chief Data Officer here for over 9 years. And I love what you said. I mean, we're definitely on that journey of ensuring that consumers are getting the kinds of experiences that are relevant to them, while at the same time, trying to keep up with the rate and pace of change, be it change in the market, competitive landscape, regulatory landscape, things like privacy. So yes, of course, like we're wrestling with how to strike the right balance between having enough data and having too much data, where you begin to have challenges around meeting privacy obligations. So those are the kinds of things that get me excited about, making sure that we have well-defined data, that we understand and can defend why we have what we have, and then drive as much value in using it and delivering the right kinds of experiences to our customers and to each other, even at work. I mean, we often overlook how much data we need just to execute the responsibilities we have, and trying to bring it in a way that makes us effective, efficient, and responsible is one of the things that we're on a journey on as well. And something that I always think about is that human interaction with information.
It's such an excellent point, especially in the era of remote first, right? Where we're disconnected, and data is really the kind of the glue that binds us. And a lot of companies look at customer data as something that puts great experiences in front of their customers, but at the same time, most of the businesses we work for are still designed with different departments, and we've got different business units, and sometimes some of these business units need a little bit of couples therapy at times, and we try to figure that out. How do I make sure that I'm getting the right data to the right business unit so they can do their thing? And I think a lot of times, even just understanding, where I'm on one side of the spectrum, being a technology officer, that my end and the marketing end are there's a pretty big chasm between the two. As a founder, I understand more of the entirety of the business, but but as just a normal technology guy, marketing is kind of the North Pole, South Pole that I see sometimes in the organizations, and they often are the ones that need data the most. Ram, talk to me. Talk to me. Tell me what keeps you up at night and what makes you happy.
Yep, so it's Ram Kumar. I'm the Chief Data Analytics Officer for Cigna International Health. So my portfolio covers 35 countries. So Australia, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. So what I love about that is one size doesn't fit all. Okay, so every country, every business is different, maturity levels are different, the kind of data they deal with is different. So trying to be what keeps me awake is trying to be agile and nimble constantly all the time, try to keep it simple is what keeps me up. How do I prioritize which use cases in those 35 countries I need to focus on, whether it's to do with data management or data foundations, or whether to do with analytics or AI? How do you prioritize driving value creation? And I'm a big have a lot of passion on data quality. I started working in data quality since 1991, I think. And I used to have a quote. I still say the same quote. You see, in an organization, you may have the best processes, best people, best technology, best intelligence solutions, whether you call AI solution or analytics solution. If the underlying data that touches people, processes, and technology is poor, there is no silver bullet. Your outcome is going to be poor. So data quality is so fundamental and central to what you do, is what I strongly believe in. And to me, data quality is an organization cultural issue, nothing to do with the tools or processes or things, because people built it. So at the end of the day, how do you drive the culture of data quality within an organization? And the importance of data quality is what I spent a lot of time. I've seen success in few organizations where I've change the culture, but still that is going to be a fundamental issue even for AI, and maybe in future another AI squad, because today's technology is tomorrow's legacy. But the concept of data quality, data management, data foundation, they're going to continue to remain the same. In fact, they're becoming more and more complex. So that's where, even though I am chief data analytics officer, my passion is around this area of data quality and data management and stuff, because they are the foundational building blocks for the outcomes you want to drive. The outcomes to me are AI or analytics or customer experience or partner experience, but the foundations in which you have to drive that is what I'm quite keen also and excited about. Yeah.
Thank you. You said it. You said a keyword in there where you've seen it work in a few places. For those people out there that feel that their organizations are behind in data or don't have a grasp of data or are struggling to truly leverage data, don't feel bad. We're all in that same situation. We're all in a situation where we could do a lot better with data. There's a massive greenfield opportunity out there to do more with data, and we all have improvements we can do on the data front. My name is Mike Anderson. I'm the founder and CTO of Telium, and my mission that I've been on for the last 16 years is really putting better data in the hands of my customers so that they could use that to dazzle their customers. And that's what makes me happy. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what turns the beard this color that it is that you see today. So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about with you guys is I want to talk about real time, the power of real time. I am a real time guy. I'm fascinated by it. I love that I can get online on an airplane. I love that I can order dog food right now and have it in 35 minutes from Amazon. I think I'm amazing. I'm amazed at that. I'll bounce around Netflix for 30 minutes trying to figure out something to watch, and I have more content than anybody's ever had in their life to watch, but I still can't figure out anything to watch. What do you guys feel about the notion of real-time experiences? Some people realize it's real time is very hard to do. It's very hard to get the response times down into the 20, 30, 40, 50 milliseconds realm. But what do you guys think? Talk to me, Ram, about some of your customers at Cigna Healthcare. I know healthcare is not always real time, but I do believe that everywhere there is a real time component of certain use cases?
Yep. I mean, real time depends on the problem domain or solution domain that you are trying to address. For example, real time unique identification of customer in real time when customer comes through multiple channels. How do you uniquely identify the customer in real time is one of the fundamental work, and that I've spent a lot of time in previous organizations using the concept of master data management, where we build things like party data management rather than customer. A party defined as a party. A party could be a customer, could be an employee, could be an agent, could be a broker. So we have built those sort of solutions to uniquely identify someone coming in real time through various channels. So that have been done from a healthcare perspective. A lot of Since COVID, there's a lot of work that's happening on the virtual healthcare environment where customer call in real time. So in real time, you want to identify who your patient is. Immediately, you should be able to get all the information about the patient's history in real time. So there's a lot of focus now starting to happen on that space. Before, it was more of a teleservice call. People call you and then you try to understand them, ask some questions. But now with the virtual healthcare environment, everything they want to see is automatic, quick happening, things like that. So we have started doing a lot of focus in that area. And again, data quality in real time and uniquely identifying your patient and the history associated with the patient. And you are able to pull data from various source systems or legacy systems to get history about the patient is something that we are focusing on quite a bit now. Yeah, since COVID, actually. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I know for the benefit of the audience, there's a lot of talk about identifying the visitors, and definitely within Cigna Healthcare, identifying the visitors is key. But there are times where just putting good experiences in front of customers, where the customer is potentially in an unknown state, if they're coming in there and they're researching, or they're looking for offerings and things like that. I think there's a lot of experiences that many companies overlook when a customer is in the unknown state. Like, I don't know who you are. I don't have your email address. I don't have your phone number yet. You're not an official patient, but I can still have a conversation with you. I joke around with with audiences when I'm speaking, and I say, I hate those websites where the very first thing that I'm met with is, give me your email address. Because I think, like, look, I'm just here to have a conversation with you. And, if you and I bumped into each other in a hallway, I wouldn't say, hey, give me your email address so I can talk to you. We just have a conversation. And so I think that some of it too is to understand, when when the customer is known, there's all kinds of experiences that you can unlock. But even when the customer is unknown, there's a great opportunity to still put better experiences in front of them. You can't email them, you can't do social marketing to them, but you can put more relevant content in front of them, and you can give them what I call the holy grail, which is potentially next best experience.
Yeah, that's why the things around Gen AI related chatbots, which are more intelligent chatbots, are available, where whether they are a customer or whether they are a potential customer of yours, you want to leave them with better experience. And that is very relevant to them, what they want and things like that. So I think the advancement around Gen AI, chat, GPT type areas is definitely turning the tide of giving better experiences for those unknown customers starting to happen. Yeah.
The efficiency, I mean, we build software for efficiency's sake. Justin, talk to me about your customers and the value of real time at Synchrony.
So I think real time is a very loaded term.
Yes.
Because frankly, nothing is really real time. It's getting more to event-based, frictionless interactions. So what's in my mind really important is aligning the experience with the expectation. So, for example, if someone applies for credit at a store, particularly if they're getting a store card, they're going to want to use that card immediately upon the credit approval, right? And that's really important, is in trying to reduce that cycle time. More importantly, to provide the right kinds of offers at that point of sale. So we're constantly looking to reduce the friction that consumers face when it comes to, logging in to service their account, the whole life cycle from apply to servicing and everywhere in between. And so, AI can play a role in that. A lot of times it has to do with really thoughtful orchestration of data and orchestration of business process. And so getting everyone on the same page to move in the same direction, because the reality is a lot of processes get developed independent of one another. And then there's a realization at the end that, oh, we have an opportunity to improve the experiences of customers or of employees by building better connective tissue using the data that we have, right? So to your earlier comment, right? If in an ideal world, we're not collecting lots of data to interact with someone, but inevitably you're incrementally collecting information each interaction along the way. And being able to connect that together, ensuring that there are quality checks, right? Tuned to, the expectation, right? Like in step one, you're not going to have all the information, so it's hard to declare good or bad. But as that accumulates over time, based on how it's used, you end up with, more dynamic opportunities to ensure that the data can be leveraged for value, controlled to satisfaction, with all the goal of reducing that friction with every interaction that someone faces. So I kind of look at it in that regard in terms of connecting events and reducing friction.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct, and I would imagine too in both of your businesses, as a patient or a customer flows through the journey, they're oftentimes at a point where their responsibility, their experience responsibility is potentially a different business unit. And that's a big that's why we have the jobs that we do and why we oversee, because it's not only about just having the data so the customer experience is there, it's herding the cats internally and saying, like, this is a brand new customer and this is the data relevant to this portion of the journey, and this is a known customer, or this is a long-standing customer. And a lot of times the business units, I mean, actually I would say the majority of the time, the business units are not organized necessarily directly aligned with the customer journey. They're organized in, the more traditional business units. So data is a big deal internally as well. Let's talk about flexibility and data integration. This is an interesting topic for me, because we at Telium still believe in this concept of best of breed, where you get to you pick whatever vendors you want, and we think that everything should be entirely interchangeable. It's it's an interesting pattern, because there's sort of anti-patterns. You either have an iPhone or an Android phone, or maybe you're AT&T or T-Mobile, and so you have this where you can have one gigantic vendor that tries to give you everything, or a handful of vendors out there. We've got a lot of cloud choices. We've got Google Cloud and Amazon and Azure out there. We've got data warehouse choices, and then we've got probably 15,000 vendors just in the MarTech space that we can use for something. How do you guys feel about flexibility around do you like the best of breed, or are you guys more kind of an all-in-one stack? I know there's a lot of efficiency mandates coming down on companies too, to reduce their spend and reduce their number of vendors, but I'm interested where you guys sit on the on just sort of the overall architecture. Is it, I'm going to go with one big vendor, or I'm going to go with a lot of little vendors? Justin, why don't you see what you think?
So so at the end of the day, we're building ecosystems, right? And in an ecosystem, there has to be a degree of diversity. Otherwise, ecosystems fail, right? They can die out. So at the end of the day, I kind of look at it from starting point from a risk perspective to help drive those kinds of decisions. Is it one vendor solution? Is it multiple vendor solutions? And so we factor in, like, well, what's the one, can it plug into the existing ecosystem, right? Two, is there sufficient resource and talent with that given tool? right? Three, what is and this is where we rely on other disciplines like procurement and supplier risk management. What's the risk profile of the company that we're looking at in terms of, their products and their viability? So it's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah.
So I think one thing is to be really clear on what are those risk factors, and what's one's risk appetite. Two, how does it plug into your existing ecosystem? And three, what are the trends in the industry, right? Because inevitably, you can either choose the path of being early adopter, which depending upon the company's risk profile is either aligned or misaligned, right? Or you could play the game of, observing and watching what's going on in the industry and not being a quick adopter, but being a fast follower, right? But I don't have any really strong view on it's got to be one product or one vendor or multiple, as long as those criteria that I described are conscious, these have to be purposeful decisions.
I actually love the term ecosystem, because that's what I think companies should be looking to do, is to build a data ecosystem. I have a lot of companies that come to me and say, well, now that I have this data integration capability, which vendor should I choose? Which email vendor should I choose? Which personalization vendor should I choose? And I frankly don't care, because we integrate to all of them. But what I say is, like, I think we've gotten back to this era of people. And what I tell companies today is the tech is great, but everybody's evolving tech, and tools will catch up and tools will fall behind. But when you have a partner, when you have a vendor that you feel is truly vested in your success, that's one to hang on to. And so when I'm looking at our partners, I'm looking at the people component on it, because people can manipulate the tech to do amazing things. And so I look at it from a people first perspective. But Ra, I'm interested in your feedback on this too, around
Yeah,
the flexibility and data integration.
I agree almost everything that Justin had to say around risk and everything. But look at my case, multiple regions, different countries. One size is not going to fit all. Legal, regulatory, compliance, data, residency requirements, the risk factor is quite high. So definitely one size doesn't fit all approach is difficult, because the businesses are fragmented, having their own. It might have happened through mergers and acquisition. They might have multiple tools. So how do you there's no concept of, oh, we are going to modernize, change systems, and it's not going to work anymore. We know that. But how do you leverage existing assets, what we have, the ecosystem, but at the same time get an integrated type environment, have some consistency and standardization in the way we want to have the solutions, and irrespective of what underlying tools and technologies are there. So trying to keep it as a componentized, standardized framework. So that's how we have been building our what you call a data platform, where irrespective of where the source systems are, where they are, going through a compliance check and everything, and pull on use whatever data assets are required to drive a particular use case. That's the approach we have been taking. But privacy and legal and regulatory is quite a big topic. For example, there might be a vendor who can provide all the components that you need for a solution, but they may not have never operated in Kenya or anything like that. So how do we handle all those situations is what we normally deal with. So yeah, for us, it's more of a fragmented type environment, but how you can bring data together to drive whatever you're driving from a business value creation perspective is our focus.
Right. I think to add to that, and I love everything that like you said, this kind of gets into building a culture and discipline around this. It's okay to have lots of technical variation. What you don't want to have is lots of implementation patterns on top of it,
Correct.
right?
Spot
And
on.
there are an infinite number of patterns, right? They're very standard patterns for how you define a term, or how you create a data quality requirement, or how you bring data in and how it flows. And I think to build the culture, you want to make sure that those patterns are identified, they're formalized procedurally, they're socialized, and then begin to get incorporated in day-to-day execution. Those patterns build that kind of consistent way that people can operate and talk to one another, and that helps reinforce creating a culture, regardless if it's data quality or any other type of discipline. So again, I think it's less about the tools after you get through sort of that risk piece. It's really around how one is leveraging those capabilities to drive that business value, following known patterns, or when a new pattern is identified, acknowledging it's a new pattern, we should follow that going forward. And I think that also comes through with things like AI, right? Because the amount of rigor to try to get any new use case approved at any company can be very challenging. But if you're approving patterns and it's just another example of the same pattern that you've already used and already approved and already tried, same thing with the technology architecture, it becomes a lot easier not only to stand it up, operationalize it, but also put the right kinds of controls in place.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I believe if you build this is my view. If you build a data strategy, I make sure that the data strategy doesn't mention anything about tools. Right? Today's tools and technologies are tomorrow's legacy. So it has to be independent, as Justin rightly said, that common pattern that you want to build irrespective of the tool, so that tomorrow when things change, and it will change, how adaptive is your data strategy is where the key thing is around when you build a data strategy. For that, you need to be very clear with a set of guiding principles that you're not going to compromise on, and ensure that your strategy is built around that, your architecture is built around that. That's how I have done data strategy in my career.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just another dimension, Mike, I'll turn it back to you in a moment. And because I saw one of the comments in the chat around things like data-driven architecture, best approach. It's really hard to say what is the best approach, because you have to understand the goals, objectives, and culture of the company that you're in.
Yeah.
So there are basically within those patterns, how that gets executed within an organization depends on those other factors, right? It's an approach, it's a known pattern. A lot of this stuff is, but how it manifests, you got to consider all the things in terms of how's the company going to use that pattern.
Yeah, valid point. Yep.
The excellent points. I really love it. I just talked to my team this week and looked at some presentation slides they put together and looked at it and thought, this is very implementation centric, right? The information we're sharing with the customer is very implementation centric. When you put the customer at the center and you work out, you're right. The tool is the farthest thing from the customer. When you start to say, what does the customer need? What is the business outcome that we're going for? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? How are we going to achieve it? How are we going to measure it? Then you get to the tool. And when you're running global organizations, the idea is, you're right, you're going to have some local tools in certain regions like Kenya, where this is who we're going to use for some of our experience layer interactions, right? And you're right. The data foundation, it should be very standardized, very well built, very flexible to say, we really don't care. And that's why I say, when they come to me and say, which one should I choose? I don't care. Pick a vendor that you like to work with. Pick people that you like to interact with, because your data strategy should really be bulletproof to whatever tool that you choose. That's the foundation. And I see so many companies that say, well, we spent 2 years trying to stand up this tool. Like, really? Well, you didn't just start with a use case and try to start peeling that off and try to get some value right out of the gate. And then a lot of times they run out of steam within the organization, or the people that set up all of that leave. And then they're left with this tool infrastructure that no one knows how to take the next leg of the baton race. So I agree. There's a lot of strategy on just the data infrastructure, and that truly is how you build a good data culture, is to start with the data, not with the tool. Right. Now we're going into everybody's favorite topic: regulatory compliance and privacy. I can say, when I go back to the beginning days of Telium, I had a really, really good idea about almost everything that I wanted to build. But in 2018, I was throwing a pretty big curveball named GDPR, and I didn't see that coming, and I didn't see it coming that fast. We knew third-party cookies were going to die. We knew the DMPs were going to die. We were way ahead on all of that. But GDPR, privacy and compliance, right? And this is a really interesting time for us. But I still do believe when we're talking about customer experiences and what I'll call data excellence, if you look just at your personal patterns, we share a lot of data with Google, we share a lot of data with Amazon, we share a lot of data with Facebook and Instagram, and probably Dropbox for some older timers, and there's a lot of technology out there that we will share our data with because we get really good experiences back. I think that the motivation for a lot of users is, I'm very willing to share my data, but what are you going to do with it, and how is it going to improve the efficiency that I'm going to feel when I interact with your brand? Justin, talk to me about privacy and compliance, because I know you guys are at the top of the game on this.
No, thanks. The one thing that I find very interesting with a lot of the data management disciplines and conversations I have with our board is that the defensive side of data, which is what you're talking about, and the offensive side of data, which we were just talking about previously, tend to have the same capabilities, right? And so regardless if you're building a customer data strategy for growth or you're trying to protect the customer data for privacy obligations, it all boils down to the same kinds of things that we tend to be very familiar with data management, which is you have to know what data you have, right? You have to know what it means. You have to know where it's located. You have to know what's putting it there. You have to know what's using it. How good is it to, how safe is it to use? Who's accountable for it? And then of course, dispose of it at the end of its life cycle. And that's applicable to things like heightened standards. That's BCBS 239. It's applicable to all the stuff around privacy. We can talk about lots of regulations. So, what's to me been very interesting around the privacy umbrella is sort of the new trends around data minimization, that's something that's top of mind to me, because for many years, organizations are drilled in with things like records retention. You have to retain, you have to retain, you have to retain, which can create a very complicated, overwhelming ecosystem of data to manage, let alone to be able to extract value out of. And so for me, one of the biggest things from the privacy piece is, being able to quickly leverage all of these catalogs that we've established to help us know what data we have and where it's located, and then connecting to be able to power that for things like automated retention, automated disposal, automation around data protection. That's been, I think, a very interesting facet that's going on. I don't think a lot of people sort of necessarily connecting those things, right? Being able to really get down to say, we're going to delete this data because we have an obligation as good stewards of our consumers' data to get rid of it because we don't need it anymore, and really challenge ourselves around that and really enforce that. That can help simplify data environments. So I think that, I'm not sure that's directly answering your question. It's something that we're very focused on, because we've been able to leverage a solid foundation around knowing what data we have and where it's located and what put it in, as well as being able to leverage that to know where data is going, and really incorporating into our business process as controls and as toll gates. But yeah, I think done right, privacy can be a competitive advantage, because then you can go to market to your consumers to give them the reassurances that we are acting responsibly with the data that we have, which at the end of the day is one of the objectives around privacy.
It's definitely changed from the engineering and from the developer side of things. It's definitely changed the design patterns on this side of the house. But now that's a great architecture, but how do you delete it? Because that's, a lot of times when we're talking about analytic data and lifetime data, within a system, deleting records wasn't a thing that you would do, right? You might archive them, but deleting them wasn't a thing that you do. Now now you have to, and there's a lot of legal discussion that has to happen where you say, what can we save that's relevant to the history of a transaction journey versus the things that we actually do have to get rid of.
I actually think that can be fairly straightforward if approached a certain way, right? Kind of the way I think about it is what is the legal defensibility, right? Which includes things like, well, there's a contractual obligation. There's a law that says we must retain it for this long. And so after you kind of traverse the landscape of all the contractual or legal obligations around retention, you start looking at, you work with your business, stakeholders on, if we were to delete it after that maximum period, will that pose a problem? And then we kind of talk about, okay, well, how do we defend that?
Yeah.
And we often look at things like, well, there are lots of industry guidelines. Like if you look at things like CCAR and CSOL, for those that are dealing with things like CCAR, the Federal Reserve's recommendations, you need data dating back to 2 economic cycles. That's defensible, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of data. So I think if you approach it, and there's a lot of storytelling that goes along with that, but if you approach it from that defensibility perspective, you can get people to rally around these things. Becomes less scary.
I think you can. I think that there's I remember having a conversation with one of our HR executives a while back, and she told me, I said, why are we doing this way? And she said, well, my 11 years experience tells me that we should do this way. And I thought, but everything has changed in the last 5 years, right? And that's it is a spirit of collaboration. It's working together, and it's being transparent and having alliances. And with technology, we have to move very fast. There's a new version of Chat GPT out every single morning. But on the legal side, that's a slower moving ship. And so but you're right, to your point, the observability and having very clean architectural definitions of where data is going, how it got there, who put it there, for what is its purpose. That tends to bring, I think, legal into the ecosystem more, where they start to understand, because from everybody's perspective, building a high quality data culture at a company means every organization has to modernize with what's going on these days. And that's a lot of movement for a lot of different teams. Rob, what do you feel on this topic of compliance and privacy? Healthcare is
Data privacy,
right,
massive, huge,
massive.
very sensitive, and particularly think about my case, 35 countries, right? I'm not just sitting US, but all different regions, GDPR and other countries. So what we have done is that, of course, I can't go and fix the whole world problem within the organization, trying to say that I'm going to deal with data privacy. So if you remember, I mentioned about the data strategy we have built, which is a technology independent data strategy with data foundational components that will drive business outcome. One of the key component of the data strategy is data risk management. So what does it mean is that any use case that we build, we've only started from a use case perspective to drive that thing. The use case, whether it's an AI or whether it is a data project or it is an IT project or whether it's an analytics project, everything has to go through the data risk management framework. And one of the core fundamental component of the data risk management is acceptable use of data by design. So acceptable use of data, we have 3 lenses that we go through every use case. First lens is that whatever the data movements, what data we use for the use case, whether it's AI or analytics, whatever we are trying to do, is it socially acceptable? Because we have a responsibility as a healthcare. There is an expectation of the society that we are there to protect their lives and help from a health perspective. So socially, is it the right thing to do? So we look into that, and we have a risk around that. Once we tick that box, we then look at the next lens, is that ethically, is it the right thing to do? From a customer perspective, whatever we are trying to do, is it the right thing to do? and then comes the privacy, legal, and my view is that if we pass the first two, the private, legal, and regulatory should be straightforward. That's our view. So we go through those three lenses, applying the required whatever the regulatory, legal compliance are based on the product that we are building for that region. We apply those lenses to make sure we are fully covered. And if there is an issue with privacy or something, we have everything is linked to a business risk. So whatever we do, in fact, one of the core component of the data risk management is data quality. When we are building a dashboard or when we are building an analytical model, we look at the data quality of those key critical data elements for that model that we build, and we go back to the business saying, hey, this predictive model is based on 60% accurate data. What is your risk appetite? Put the pressure back on the business, because generally the tendency is that the data privacy team or the governance team should fix all these issues. No, data is a business asset, so business should take accountability of that. So we put the risk appetite back on them and say that, are you comfortable with 60% accurate data to make a decision? If you are comfortable, I'm fine. Tomorrow, if you violate something, are you willing to go to jail? I don't have a problem. So that's how we put the pressure back on them. So automatically they come to the table and the conversation is very different, because you are helping them to understand the risk around that. So that's where we are very particular about privacy, privacy assessment. We do that. We work with the privacy team. So all the use cases have to go through that risk assessment framework. And in fact, it's a very unique, lightweight framework. For example, for a country, 35 countries, we have a data governance team of 3 people. So in fact, for your information, today we won an AI Excellence Award in the Information and AI Governance World Conference for the data risk management work. We have done lightweight, self-serving risk management framework, but it addresses all the questions you are supposed to ask about the data that is being used to drive that particular outcome. So that's the approach we have taken, actually. Yeah.
There's
I think
go ahead,
that's,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's a great approach. We did something very similar. We've embedded data and information management risks into the overall risk assessment frameworks for every process. Right. With across an organization, it's very difficult for like a CDO, CDAO to own all the risks of how data is being created and consumed. To Ram's point, right? The process owns the risk. And so being able to embed that into that assessment piece where each process owner self-reflects and gets assistance from like a data office. And how I look at my role is I'm providing shared services. I have skin in the game because I'm providing services. My goal is to help act as an enabler and to help protect the organization. And it's up to each process owner to effectively assess those risks and partner and leverage those controls. That's how you begin to build a culture around it, is that there's shared accountability and that no one is stopping anything. It's like governance can be viewed as a very negative thing. Like you're going to get slapped and told that you can't do something, right? These programs don't work if that's the attitude. They work from, we're going to help you assess the risk. And if you want to accept the risk and it's within the company's risk appetite, we can, period.
Yeah.
And some
to add to Justin's,
violating law, right? That's the one risk you can't accept, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
To add to Justin's point, the word data governance is seen as bad word. Policing, bureaucratic, controlling. So what we said, putting the risk back on the business. We don't, what I did for my function, I don't call it as data governance team. We call it data enablement team. We are here to enable you, provided you are able to manage the risk based on your risk. If you want us to proceed, we are happy to proceed, no problems. So that's how we have tried to, because things are changing so fast. So we want to move faster rather than being seen as a barrier for progress. So that's again, the culture aspect comes in there. Yeah.
It helps establish and reinforce this data-driven culture mindset, right? If you really want to differentiate an organization in this age, companies have to become data-driven, which means the people that are consuming the data and creating the data understand that they have obligations as well, and to consciously think about it, which goes into that risk assessment, right? That's how you begin to get that data-driven culture and community established.
But Justin, this could be controversial. This is my view. when you look at industry, what people think about data-driven culture is they think that by creating value out of data, they have a data-driven culture. To me, no.
No,
How
I
an
agree.
organization manages the entire life cycle of the data, and the value creation from data is just that use component, a small component. There's so much before and so much after. So, and how an organization is able to do that, organize its data, manages its data, drive value, and manage risks and resolving conflicts is a true data-driven organization. But unfortunately, you see, look at the definition. Generally, in industry, it's about value creation. Yeah.
We look at it a little differently, and I agree with your thoughts. For us, it's that decisions are not based on instincts. They're based on facts, and that there's
Facts.
data to support the decision. To me, that's really getting to data-driven decisions. And then
Decisions.
what you said to me is underneath that, which is builds the confidence so that we can be data-driven. That's what data management is. Yeah.
Correct.
We yeah, I know what you mean, Justin. There's a lot of times where I'll look and say like this is just like this is a gut decision that somebody's making because they think that this is what needs to be done rather than being a true data driven decision. You know, as a software vendor, I tell my product team, look, you guys are the nucleus within the organization, and you're the center, and everybody's flowing around you, product marketing and sales and enabling everything. But as we get into these organizations, you know, like Cigna and Synchrony, I think the data organization is the nucleus. And like you said, you know, you have atomically speaking, you have protons and electrons that are flying all around doing their things, but you guys are holding it all together. And as we move into the next era of AI and data differentiation, everybody's got something on their plate that says, you know, in 2023, every CEO walked into their strategy session and say, do something with AI. I don't care what. I had a conversation with my CEO yesterday, and he's like, "We need AI writing more of our software for us. Like, just get it done." But as we build that data culture, and you know, I think that data nucleus, AI is the wild west right now, and so the more you can control that, the more you can start to leverage everybody wants the new shiny easy button and the new get everything done with so I can just sit back and do nothing. But talk to me about AI. I know that we agree that data foundation is an essential precursor to trying to do anything with AI. Ron, why don't you start us off?
Yep. So 2 years ago, it was all data science. Now data science is a bad word. Everything's replaced by AI. So nobody talks about data science. So for me, the foundations we build, the data strategy that we build, as I told you, if you are able to democratize the data in terms of getting the right data to the right place at the right time with the right quality, with the right context and the right level of governance, any outcome is possible, whether you want to drive an AI solution, whether you want to drive an analytical solution, when you want to build an IT solution. So when I built this framework or the data strategy 4 years ago with the data risk management framework, despite all this discussion around AI and stuff, still it's rock solid. It's still working because I didn't want to do much because still I do. People talk about ethical and acceptable use of AI. Hey, ethical and acceptable use of data. If my data, I'm using it ethically and it's acceptable and responsible, my AI system is going to be responsible. What do I need to do something special to make AI system responsible? So my view is that irrespective of today AI, tomorrow maybe AI Square. I don't know. But at least the foundation that I'm building on, which is an investment for the future, is going to help me drive whether it's AI or whether you talk about even data quality. It doesn't matter whether it's data science or you're building a descriptive analytics or whether you're doing an AI system. So all those foundations around that, privacy, legal, still are applicable to me. So that's actually my answer. So I'm not, while I'm excited what's happening in AI, having been practicing this, been a practitioner in the field for actually 40 years. But at the same time, the foundations I don't want to compromise, which is what I'm focusing on, the right data strategy with the right components in the data strategy, like data risk, data quality, data privacy, and things like that. That's my view.
Justin, what do you think?
I have the same perspective. We are on an generative AI journey. Let's be careful here because AI is being used synonymously with AI. We've been using AI for years, even before data science was a term. It was called robotic process automation. We do semantic language processing and natural language processing. So, but I similarly with our strategy too, right? That foundation that we built of knowing what data do we have and what it means and where it's located and who's responsible, embedding that the risk discipline into every process and building a culture, not only democratization, but this mindset of everyone is a steward, right? Which we've been doing for many, many years before generative AI came up, has really helped us look at generative AI as, well, first of all, is this the appropriate technology to use to solve a given business problem? Because everything's being thrown at it. It's like, solve it with generative AI. Well, that's a search. It's not applicable to large language models. And the conversations that we've been having have been really focused on the business value creation argument because we have the risk control discipline in place. And we're looking at is like, is this use case introducing risks that have not surfaced before? That to me is the biggest piece of this. It kind of gets back to what I was saying around the rate and pace of change, because every technology advancement, may introduce risks that we've never had to think about before. And I think to Ram's point, a lot of the risks around data kind of are independent of that, right? And the good news is people recognize it. When they're pitching the use cases, they have to go through, this is how we're mitigating all these risks that we know about. And then here's the net incremental value being created. And we go, okay, that pattern's approved. And then any other use case that comes in, as long as they're following that pattern, it's a very quick bring on. But we're moving cautiously because we're not sure of what incremental risks that we've never seen before come up.
That's such a key point. Like, when you're building network systems, you build it and you try to make it as hardened as you possibly can, but then somebody comes out there and hits it in a certain way that you didn't expect, and you realize I've got a gap there. I'm seeing the same thing within these data governance. I know that's a bad word now, but these data governance policies that people are building or programs that they're building, then we've got these tools that just come in like Glean and will just slurp everything in, and you find out right away that, hey, we may have some holes in some of the ways that we're allowing access to data, and we're letting the wrong data get to the wrong place. And so that I see is a big challenge and a big opportunity for people to just tighten up their data governance programs, because these AI tools are hungry and they're going to come out there trying to look for everything that they can.
It's more than data governance, right? It's the overall risk governance, because there are information security risks that are associated with that. There are lifecycle management risks. There's software obsolescence risk. You have a whole slew of different types of risks. So yes, data is a key piece of that. But if you've already established a strong ecosystem and good risk discipline around that, you really have to make sure that you're looking at all the different risks. I often argue around the risk that the process that's using the AI will have, right? Because that's where the impact happens most. And it's really important to me that everyone's looking at, well, what's the cumulative risk effect to the existing process? Like, are we looking at it wing to wing, not just the data risks or the information security, the technical risk, but the wing to wing operational risks? That's the piece that I think a lot of organizations need to pay attention to in looking at, is this the right place to bring large language model generative AI into?
I think too, and I'm going to queue up Rom here. Also, as you get into these global organizations, a big risk that you have to look into is, a lot of these AI companies, although they have astounding valuations, but a lot of these AI companies are still in the early days, and they don't necessarily have data centers in Kenya, which means that if I want to run my data through AI programs, I may have a data residency challenge. Correct. Where that data is leaving the country, and that is, if it's allowed, it's not going to be allowed much longer. And so, Ron, what are your thoughts on that? Data residency has to be a big thing.
No. Data residency is huge. For example, you take UAE. No data can get out of UAE. No
Yeah.
data can get out of UAE. If you look at Abu Dhabi, at least UAE, you can anonymize and maybe take some data, but Abu Dhabi and other things, no data can get out of the country. So what do you do? So that's the reason why, for example, to do even Chat GPT type Gen AI work, Microsoft Azure, you can't run an API from US instance. So now US government is partnering with UAE government to have a local setup here. So data residency is huge for us actually because it's an extremely sensitive issue, and the legal implications of not complying are quite huge. So we do take into account those factors definitely when we look into even AI tools, whether they are designed for global, designed for handling legal regulatory compliance requirements globally. Have they proven that? Have they been regulatory approved and things? So we are very particular about that. So yeah.
Guys, looking ahead as we wrap up, what do you see? What do you see shaping the industry in the next couple of years? Ron, we'll start with you.
To me, AI is going to play a huge role in helping simplify data. I'm not going to solve the data management problem or anything like that, because data management is a people's issue, organization, cultural transformation issue, and organization should be looking at it as an investment into data management rather than a cost. But AI tools have already started come up helping in automating things, simplifying stuff, data governance tools and stuff. So that's going to be what's going to happen, which is pretty good thing for people like me who are very focused on data foundations, because these tools will simplify things to an extent. But again, the problem that will not be solvable by AI or anything is that culture around the whole thing around data lifecycle management governance, which has to be come from the board and the CEO from at that level. So that will be an ongoing challenge. And the latest MIT report says that while all these things are improving in terms of value creation, the culture around data in an organization actually is going down for the last 3-4 years. So yeah.
Justin?
It's kind of hard to add on to that because I agree with everything that Ram said. So to kind of go in the periphery in terms of like enabling some of that, metadata is one of the most important assets, and it's often overlooked in the conversation of data management. Um, Building up your metadata and building up the ability to plug that metadata in to be used within business processes and tools like AI become really critical to help drive scale. So if you're not investing enough in metadata capture and metadata management and plugging that into help power large language models, and that's an area that very few have started doing, right? That's very nascent, is that plugging in between them. That's where I think there's a big boom that's ahead of us. Sort of, and that gets back to the ecosystem, because everything is tethered around or connected through that metadata, but it's not yet embedded into all these large language models yet. And like, how do you plug your metadata into that? So I think that's going to be an emerging trend that we're going to see. A few years ago, it was called data fabric. So
Yeah. For as kind of a final wrap up, I think that you guys obviously have tremendous amount of experience in this space, and you've seen a lot. I know that you guys have battle scars under your shirts for I certainly do from a data perspective. For these companies that are just getting started on their journey with data, as a takeaway, what are the first, second, third kind of quick things that you think companies need to do to be successful? I see patterns with our customers where when you have a center of excellence around data, I see companies start to do much better in the realm of customer experience and leveraging data for the sake of customer experience. But for these people that are saying, "Hey, where do I start?" This was a great webinar. What tips can you give us, Justin?
don't start with things being about data management. Start about finding a business problem where data management capabilities can help solve the problem, and incrementally build your culture around that. be it there's a data quality problem that's affecting it, or be it that, we don't have the data in a convenient place. Make it about driving the value rather than making it about data management.
Love it. Ram, take us out.
Yep. Justin's point valid. You can't data management. It's a cultural transformation. It takes time. So you can't, nobody has time, budget or anything, but you have to do it in parallel. My view is that do whatever you do, try with a data centric approach over technology centric or anything, because have that data centric approach, at least have a clear data strategy to whatever, then build your ecosystem around that data strategy. That is my view, because that is sustainable, because data is your lifeblood. As I said, today's technology is tomorrow's legacy. You don't say today's data is tomorrow's legacy. You don't. So data is a lifeblood of your business. So start with a data centric approach. Is my recommendation. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a really fun webinar. I know there's been a lot of value that's come out of this. I know who to call the next time I'm stumped on the topic of data foundation, because you guys are clearly experts in your field, and I appreciate the time. Thank you to our attendees. This was a lot of fun for me. I mean, this is probably one of the most valuable webinars that I think companies could look at, because this topic, this feature is what will be the future for businesses. And you're right. It all drives, Bezos said it, put the customer in the center. And I say it, put the data in the center with them. And that's what we need to do, because that is what drives your business. Data and customers. That's what it's all about. Ram, Justin, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you guys and hanging out with you guys today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.